boys and girls, hope all is well. I hope you enjoyed our last read aloud on Wishtree. I just wanted to take this time first to acknowledge all of your beautiful work that I saw on our Padlet, where you guys showed your drawings of Red, who is the main character. And I just want to say, creating a visualization of what we read paints this picture in our head and helps us, I think, understand the story a little bit more, which is why I had you do this in the beginning. So as we continue to read, this may help us better understand the book, especially I think through the computer screen would help a lot, because we're not face to face and we're not reading the book together necessarily. It's through the computer screen. So I think that'll help us a little bit with this. Okay, so with this read aloud, we are going to be reading chapters 8 through 13. And after we read those chapters, you guys are actually going to be completing a Kahoot. The Kahoot has some questions that may be from the first read aloud that we did, and also the one that I'll be reading to you now. So I want you guys to pay attention to some details. I might hint at some things throughout the book that might stand out to you a little bit to help you with the questions. So make sure to pay close attention and listen carefully. If you want, you could even go back to our first read aloud and rewatch that video to listen to the first few chapters again to help you jog your memory, if that might help you a little bit. So just listen carefully, listen to those hints I might give you. So let's go over what we learned so far about Red from our last read aloud. First thing we know is that she is a sycamore tree. A sycamore tree is a plant species, just like there's like an oak tree or a palm tree. They're different species. There's different kinds of trees and plants. So she is a sycamore tree. We also know that Red can talk, and it's clear also, even if we haven't read the book, we could tell that Red is the narrator. She's speaking to us as the reader. So, which is pretty cool actually. So we know that she's the narrator, and as we continue to read the book, we can see how she's able to talk. Like, she talks to her other animal friends who are also able to talk, like Bongo. Bongo's her crow friend who comes to visit her every day, almost like best friends. And she also has like the possums and the raccoons who form this community in her tree. So she could talk to all of those animals, but she can't talk to humans. And that's actually their number one secret as animals and plants. They can't tell any human, because then, you know, it's like their little secret. They can't tell, because then they'll get in trouble or everyone will go crazy. So everyone has to keep to themselves, but we can still understand what Red is saying. And we understand what's going on in her head because she's the narrator. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit just real quick to go back to a few points that I made. A little bit more about Red is that her best friend is Bongo, who is a crow. And Bongo and Red have this interesting friendship. We will learn to see throughout the book how Red is very much of an optimist who sees the positive side of things, whereas Bongo is more of a pessimist. She tends to be a little bit more negative and cautious about everything. But Bongo does that because she cares for Red. And the same thing goes for the way Red feels about Bongo. They're all very kind creatures. Red is a very kind tree. It's one of her character traits. She's very kind. She's also very talkative, as we could tell. She's a narrator. She even admitted herself in the first few chapters that she's very talkative. She likes to talk. Even though she's a tree, she can't necessarily talk to humans. She talks to other creatures. And because she can't talk to humans, she says, and she tells us, that she is also a very good listener. A lot of people come up to the trees that like to sit and just think, and trees listen. And she says that. And another major thing that we learned about Red, if you haven't caught on by now, is that she is also known as the Wishtree. And this means that on May 1st, people come and they tie they write wishes on like little pieces of paper maybe, or a bow, or any type of like fabric that they have, and they write these wishes on those little scraps and they tie it to her in hopes that their wishes will come true. So she's known as the Wishtree. And this all happens on May 1st, otherwise known as May Day. So now that we have reviewed all that we learned from the first few chapters and what we know about Red and who she is, let's continue on with the rest of our chapters now. Continue reading. Chapter 8. I have one more community member, although visitor is probably a better way to describe Samar. In January, she moved with her parents into one of the houses I shade, a tiny blue house with a sagging porch and a tidy garden. She is perhaps 10 years old, or so, with wary eyes and a shy smile. Samar has the look of someone who has seen too much, someone who wants the world to quiet itself. Soon after moving in, Samar began sneaking into the yard once her parents had fallen asleep. Even on the coldest nights, she trudged outside in her red boots and green jacket. Her breath was a frosty veil. She would stare at the moon and at me, and then sometimes at the little green house next door, where a boy who looks to be about her age lives. As it grew warmer, Samar would venture out in her pajamas and robe and sit beneath me on an old blanket, spattered with moonlight. Her silence was so complete, her gentleness so apparent, that the residents would crawl from their nests of thistledown and dandelion fluff to join her. They seemed to accept her as one of their own. So the word apparent means something that is clearly understood or something that is obvious. So in the sentence it says, her gentleness so apparent. So it was clear to Red, it was obvious that Samar was gentle. Something is apparent, it's very clear or obvious. Bongo especially loved Samar. She would flit to her shoulder and settle there. Sometimes she would say hello in a fine imitation of Samar's voice. Often Bongo gave Samar little gifts she'd found during her daily flights. A Monopoly token, the car. A gold hair ribbon. A cap from root beer bottle. Bongo keeps a stash of odds and ends in one of my smaller hollows, which is the opossums kindly tolerate. You never know who I might need to bribe, she likes to say. But her gifts to Samar weren't bribes. They were just Bongo's way of saying, I'm glad we're friends. If this were a fairy tale, I would tell you there was something magical about Samar. That she cast a spell on the animals, perhaps. Animals don't just leave their nests and burrows willingly. They are afraid of people, with good reason. But this isn't a fairy tale, and there was no spell. Animals compete for resources, just like humans. They eat one another, they fight for dominance. Nature is not always pretty or fair or kind. But sometimes surprises happen, and Samar, every spring night, reminded me there is beauty and stillness and grace and acceptance, and that you're never too old to be surprised. So in this chapter, we are introduced to a new character named Samar. She's another main character in the book who they're going to talk about a lot. And this chapter, Red shows great interest in Samar. She finds her to be very interesting because she's not like the other humans. Red says how usually the animals in her are afraid of people, but not Samar. And in the book, Red even says they seem to accept her as one of their own. So when Samar comes out to sit under the tree and just get away from everything, they accept her. It's like they're all friends, even in some weird way. But they don't hide, they're not afraid of her. So it's very different. And we're going to see how Red's feelings of Samar grow in the next chapters. Chapter 9. I was pleased to see Samar's family join the neighborhood. It had been a long while since we had any newcomers, but I knew that with time they would put down roots just like so many other families from so many other places. I know a thing or two about roots. So she's cracking jokes here. One night not long ago, Samar came out to visit. It was 2 a.m, late, even for her. She had been crying. Her cheeks were damp. She leaned against me and her tears were like hot rain. In her hands was a small piece of cloth, pink with little dots, Something was written on it. A wish. The first wish I'd seen in months. I wasn't surprised she knew about the Wishtree tradition. I'm kind of a local celebrity. Samar reached up, gently pulled down my lowest branch, and tied the fabric in a loose knot. I wish, she whispered, for a friend. She glanced over at the greenhouse. Behind an upstairs curtain, a shadow moved, and with that, Samar vanished back into the little blue house. So in this chapter, we just learned a little bit more about Samar. She's the new girl in the neighborhood. Her and her family just moved into the town, and Samar, goes to Red to make a wish in hopes of it coming true, that she will make a friend. And it's sad because this happens when you're new to the neighborhood, you're alone, and you want to make friends. So she's probably feeling a little bit lonely right now. So hopefully her wish will. Chapter 10. When you stand still for over 2 centuries while the worlds pass, things happen. Mostly, by far and away, good things have been my lot in life. My leaves have cooled picnickers and proposers. Beneath my boughs vows have been made, hearts mended. Nappers have napped, dreamers have dreamed, I've watched ascents attempted. And the laughter? Always and forever, laughter. But sometimes things happen that aren't so good. When they occur, I've learned that there's not much you can do except stand tall and reach deep. I have, for example, been hacked at, carved into, used for target practice. I mean, come on. I have been underwater, over-pruned, fertilized, and fussed over, ignored, and neglected. I have been struck by lightning, battered by sleet. I have been threatened with axes, chainsaws, diseases, and insects. I have tolerated the sharp claws of squirrels and the nagging pokes of woodpeckers. I have been climbed by cats and marked by dogs. I have my aches and pains, like everyone. Last year I had a mite infestation that drove me nuts. Leaf blister, sooty mold, oak wilt, leaf scorch, been there, done that. Still, trees are luckier than people in one way. Only 1% of a fully grown tree is actually alive at any one time. Most of me is made of wood cells that are no longer living. In many ways, that makes me tougher than you. So yes, I've seen a lot, and who knows, I may see much more. I could live to be 300, 500 even. It happens. Red oaks lead long lives, longer than our daintier friends black willows, persimmons, apples, and redbuds. And yet, a few days after Samar's tearful wish, something happened that made me wonder if I'd finally witnessed too much. So in this chapter, Red is telling us how sad she feels for Samar. Red is describing her experiences throughout her life and how she has had to tolerate all the bad ones. But after seeing Samar cry, she doesn't know how much more she could take. So here she is sympathizing for Samar and wants to do something about it. And the last sentence, it says, I wonder if I'd finally witnessed too much. So this might be foreshadowing something. Maybe Red is going to do something about it, but let's find out. Chapter 11. The morning was budding, and I was waiting for warmth. Down the street, a lanky boy was lingering near a stop sign. Head down, he was hunched over like a wind-blown weed. In his right hand was something shiny. A tool, maybe, or a pen? He was smiling just a bit, as if he told himself a joke only he perhaps understood. All day long I see people lost in thought, talking to themselves, grinning, frowning. He was nothing out of the ordinary. I was in the midst of a conversation with Bongo, who had just pointed out to me that I was a year older, 216 rings old, to be precise. Another sprout day, I said. I still feel like a sapling. You don't look a day over 150, Bongo replied. Best looking tree on the block. I'm really, I paused for comic effect, getting up there. Bongo, who was perched on my lowest branch, sighed. A crow's sigh is unmistakable, like a groan from a tiny, cranky old man. So the word perched in this paragraph means like standing tall, with posture. So Bongo was standing perched on a branch, nice and tall. Tree humor, I explained, just in case Bongo had missed it, although of course she hadn't. Bongo misses nothing. Because I'm so tall. Really, Red? Bongo stretched, admiring her lustrous blue-black wings. That's the best you got for me this morning? Maybe you'd appreciate my joke more if you weren't so sensitive about your stature, I teased. Corvids don't give a flying tail feather about height, Bongo said. Smarts, wiles, trickery, cunning, that's what counts in our neck of the woods. The word cunning means having a skill or being crafty. Corvids is a fancy name for birds like crows, ravens, jays, and magpies. Bongo says she's too classy for a label as common as crow. A soft wind tickled my branches, spurring. That old rascal was teasing up with promise of warmer days. The truth is, I said, it doesn't matter what size you are, Bongo. We grow as we must grow, as our seeds decided long ago. Red, way too early in the morning for the wise old tree routine. Bongo gave me a gentle peck. Although you're right, it doesn't matter how tall you are. In a fluttery blur, she sailed to a telephone pole far above my leafy canopy. Not when you fly, pal. At almost the same moment, Samar and the boy, who lived in the greenhouse, Stephen, stepped onto their porches. Both had backpacks. Both looked eager to greet the day. Their eyes met. Stephen nodded just a flicker. Samar nodded back. Not a hello exactly, just an acknowledgement. Stephen ran off toward the elementary school down the street, but Samar hesitated. Hello, she called softly. Right on cue, Bongo replied, hello, as she did every morning, sounding just like Samar. Bongo can always do a passable tuba, an impressive chihuahua, and a fine police siren. Samar looked up at Bongo, grinned, and headed toward school. With that, Bongo let loose a hoarse and gleeful caw and set off to wait for children to arrive at school. She was a regular there. Everybody knew her. She enjoyed annoying the children, and they enjoyed letting her annoy them. Bongo especially liked to untie shoelaces. While the children were busy retying them, she would snatch treats from their lunch bags. Every now and then, she would even make a polite request. She could say, chip, please. No way. And you rock, when it served her purposes. Watching Bongo soar, I considered, not for the first time, my rambling roots. What would it be like to fly, to burrow, to swim, to gallop? Delightful, no doubt, sheer joy, and yet I wouldn't trade a single rootlet for any of it. It is a great gift indeed to love who you are. So at the end here, Red is giving us a great message about not only being kind to others, but being kind to yourself. Love who you are and everything that you are, and be kind. Chapter 12. By this time, the lanky boy had walked past me, swiveled, and returned. Glancing over his shoulder, he stepped onto the brown lawn that blanketed my roots. The air changed, quivering the way it will when people are near, with chemicals, with pulsing heat, with humanness. And then it happened. He dug into my trunk with the object in his hand, fast, deliberate. Deliberate means when something is done on purpose. So clearly this person who is digging at Red's trunk is doing this on purpose. Again, he checked his surroundings. An elderly woman crossing the street smiled at him and shook her head. She was probably thinking, how sweet. I'll bet he's carving a heart with initials on it. Oh, to be young and in love. People are under the impression that trees don't mind being carved into, especially if hearts are involved. For the record, we mind. I'd never seen the boy before. He was big, maybe a high schooler. It's hard to know with people. With a tree, I can sense to the month, sometimes to the day, its age. I couldn't tell what he was carving, of course, but I could tell from the determined way he moved that it was meant to hurt. Not me. Somehow, I sensed it wasn't meant to hurt me. I was just his canvas. That said, it's not exactly a picnic getting hacked into. So Red's already got a feeling in her gut that whatever this boy is doing, it's not meant for good, it's meant for bad. What he's doing is bad, and it's not meant to hurt Red, but to hurt someone else. Bark is my skin, my protection from the world. Any wound makes it harder to fight off disease and insects. I wanted to yell, stop! To say something, anything. But of course I didn't. It's not our way. Trees are meant to listen, to observe, to endure. He was done quickly. He stood back, admired his work, gave a little nod, and left. As he walked away, I saw the tool clutched in his fist. A little screwdriver with a yellow handle, thin as a twig, bright as a meadowlark. Chapter 13. Bongo was the first to see what had happened to me. She landed at the base of my trunk, head cocked. Dropping the potato chip in her beak, she cried, "I leave you alone for a few minutes and look what happens! What on earth?" "It seems someone mistook me for a pumpkin," I said. When she didn't smile, I added, "Because, I was carved." Here we go again, Red making her jokes. For the millionth time, Red, explaining doesn't make things any funnier. Bongo flew to my lowest scaffold branch, one of my big primary limbs. She examined my injury. "Does it hurt?" "Not the way an injury might hurt you. Trees are different that way." "I gotta do something," Bongo said. "There's nothing to be done." "You've got a major boo-boo. I want to help. You're the wise old tree. Tell me what to do." "Really, Bongo, time heals all wounds." Bongo hates when I philosophize. She rolled her eyes. At least I think she did. It's hard to tell with crows. Their eyes are like morning blackberries, dark and dewy. "I just hope my bark isn't ruined," I said. "That's my favorite side." "It's not ruined, just decorated. Like those, tattoos people get." Bongo nudged me with her beak. "Show me who did this. I'll get him. I'll squawk at his window in the middle of the night. I'll dive bomb him and yank out some hair." She flapped her wings. "Nope, better yet, I'll make a deposit on his head. I'll make a deposit on his head every day for a year." I didn't ask what kind of deposit. I was quite sure I knew. "Bongo, dear," I said, "that won't be necessary." Bongo shifted from foot to foot, something she did when she was working on a problem. She said, "it's almost time for wishing day. Maybe this is some kind of wish, just a poorly delivered one." "Another wishing day," I repeated. It seemed like we had just had one. Had a whole year already come and gone? Days have a way of slipping past like raindrops in a river. "One more round," Bongo said, "of greedy people bugging you with their needs." "One more round of hopeful people wishing for better things," I corrected. Here's a good example of how Bongo is more of a pessimist and Red is more of an optimist. Red sees the more positive side of things. Wishing day was always a bit hard on me, and on my residents. Usually the animals and birds stayed away in that day to avoid curious hands and endless photographs. But it was just one day. I understood its history and my role in it. I knew people were full of longings. A mother tugging a toddler along the sidewalk froze in place when she saw my trunk. "Mommy, what does that say?" asked her little girl, who was clutching a stuffed toy dog by its bedraggled tail. The mother didn't answer. "Mommy?" They crossed the lawn. The mother stepped close to me. "It says, leave," she finally said. "Like trees have leaves?" Gently, the mother traced my cuts with her index finger. "Maybe," she answered. "Maybe like that." She looked over at the two houses near me, shaking her head. She tightened her grip on the little girl's hand. "Let's hope that's all it means." So Red had a gut feeling that what the boy was doing was not a good one, and she turned out to be right. This word he left on her, leave. This is not a very nice word. Clearly he's talking to someone. He wants someone to leave. And like Red said, she didn't think that she was talking to her. Because why would he, the boy who did this, want Red to leave? So whoever he's talking to, this is very rude. So this is it for our read aloud. So I want you to think before our next video. Think, why do you think this boy wrote the word leave? And to who? This is very rude, so this will be interesting to see for our next read aloud. Okay, so that was it. Now make sure you go back to Classroom and click on the Kahoot and answer those few questions, and we'll continue with the book tomorrow.